Everyone says gold is rare. That sounds true. It feels true. But it's also incomplete. Gold isn't rare for the reason most people think. Most people imagine gold as something hidden, buried deep, locked away in secret places. Something you either stumble upon or you don't. That idea comes from stories, from movies, from headlines about lucky discoveries. But geology doesn't work like that. Gold isn't rare because nature is trying to hide it. Gold is rare because nature almost never concentrates it. Gold exists in many places, in rock, in soil, even in the ocean. But in most of those places, it exists in tiny, scattered amounts. So small that finding it doesn't matter. What makes gold valuable isn't that it exists. It's that, in a few rare moments, nature gathers it together. And those moments are incredibly uncommon. They require heat, pressure, fluids moving through rock, and time, a lot of time, millions of years. Most landscapes never experience all of that at once. So when people say gold is rare, they're right, but not because it's hidden well. It's rare because the conditions that create usable gold almost never happen. In the next part, we'll talk about why people still look for gold in the wrong places, and why that misunderstanding never seems to go away. If gold is rare because of conditions, then why do so many people keep looking in the wrong places? The answer isn't geology, it's psychology. People don't search for gold based on how nature works. They search based on how stories work. We're drawn to places that look promising. Beautiful landscapes, dramatic terrain, clear water, shiny rocks, places that feel special. But nature doesn't care how a place feels. Gold doesn't form where things look impressive. It forms where conditions repeat, quietly, over very long periods of time. Most people expect rarity to look dramatic. They imagine something rare must stand out. But in geology, rarity is often subtle. Some of the richest gold systems on Earth look boring, dry, broken, ugly, no clear signs, no excitement. That's why people miss them. We confuse rare with obvious. But rare things in nature are usually the result of very specific processes, not visual drama. Another mistake people make is assuming gold belongs to one type of place. Mountains, rivers, deserts, forests, as if gold chose a favorite environment. It didn't. Gold appears where conditions align, not where landscapes fit our expectations. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Many people walk over gold-rich ground without realizing it, because it doesn't match the picture in their head. They aren't standing in the wrong place. They're looking at it the wrong way. In the next part, we'll break down what those rare conditions actually are, and why nature almost never repeats them. To understand why gold is rare, we have to talk about conditions, not places, not luck, conditions. Gold doesn't form just because rock exists. It doesn't appear because water flows nearby, and it doesn't care how beautiful the landscape is. For usable gold to exist, several things have to happen, in the right order, and for a very long time. First, gold has to be released from deep rock. That usually requires heat and pressure far below the surface. Without that, gold stays locked away, scattered and unreachable. Then fluids have to move through those rocks. Hot, mineral-rich fluids that can dissolve gold and carry it along tiny pathways. Those fluids don't move randomly. They follow fractures, faults, weak zones in the crust. And if those pathways don't exist, gold has nowhere to go. Next, something has to change. Temperature drops, pressure shifts, chemistry changes. When that happens, gold falls out of solution and settles. This process doesn't happen once. It has to happen again, and again, and again, in the same place. That repetition is rare. Most environments experience part of this process. Very few experience all of it repeatedly over millions of years. That's why gold is unevenly distributed. not because nature hides it, but because nature rarely builds the same conditions twice. In the next part, we'll talk about why this uneven distribution confuses people and how that confusion leads to endless searching in the wrong places. Once you understand how specific the conditions for gold really are, its uneven distribution starts to make sense. Gold doesn't spread out evenly across the land. It clusters. It concentrates in a few places and is almost absent everywhere else. This confuses people. We expect rare things to be spread thinly but fairly, a little bit everywhere. But geology doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't aim for balance. It aims for efficiency. When conditions are right, gold accumulates. When they aren't, gold remains scattered and useless. That's why two places that look almost identical can hold completely different potential. One might sit directly on an ancient fault zone where fluids moved repeatedly. The other might be just a few kilometers away and contain nothing of value. To the human eye, they look the same. To geology, they are worlds apart. This unevenness creates false hope. People see gold in one place and assume it should exist nearby. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. Gold isn't fair. It doesn't follow symmetry. It follows history, and history leaves very narrow footprints. Most landscapes were never part of that story. They didn't experience the right pressure, the right chemistry, or the right timing. So people search wider instead of deeper, farther instead of smarter. They mistake rarity for randomness. In the next part, we'll talk about why that misunderstanding leads people to chase gold in places where it was never meant to exist. When people hear that gold is rare, many of them respond by searching harder, not thinking deeper. They widen their search. They try more places. They move faster. They assume effort will compensate for misunderstanding. But gold doesn't reward effort. It rewards alignment with conditions. This is where many people go wrong. They chase places that feel likely instead of places that make geological sense. They follow stories, rumors, and visible excitement instead of slow, consistent evidence. If one area produces gold, people expect the surrounding land to behave the same way. But geology isn't contagious. Gold doesn't spread simply because it's nearby. I've seen people exhaust themselves digging everywhere except where conditions actually point. Another common mistake is assuming that rarity means unpredictability. People think gold appears randomly, so they search randomly. But rarity isn't randomness. It's selectivity. Gold forms only when very specific requirements are met. And when those requirements aren't present, no amount of effort changes the outcome. This misunderstanding keeps people busy but unproductive. They aren't unlucky. They're misaligned. In the next part, we'll talk about how gold compares to other rare materials in nature and why. Rarity doesn't always mean the same thing. To really understand why gold feels so rare, it helps to compare it with other valuable materials in nature. Take gemstones, for example. Diamonds, sapphires, garnets. Many of them are considered rare, yet they appear in a wider range of environments than gold. That's because rarity doesn't mean the same thing for every material. Some gemstones form under extreme conditions, but those conditions happen more often than the ones required to concentrate gold. Others are durable enough to survive erosion and spread through river systems, making them easier to encounter. Gold is different. Gold doesn't just need to form, it needs to gather. It can exist in trace amounts almost anywhere, but for it to become useful, it has to be collected by nature again and again into the same zones. That extra step makes gold feel elusive. People often say, if diamonds are rare, why do we find them more easily than gold in some places? The answer is simple. Their formation paths are different. Rarity is not about value alone. It's about process. Gold's process is longer, more selective, less forgiving. That's why there are places rich in gemstones but almost no gold, and places with gold but very few other valuable minerals. Nature doesn't spread value evenly. It specializes. Once you see rarity as the result of a process, not a mystery, gold starts to make more sense. In the next part, we'll talk about the biggest misunderstanding of all: why people keep expecting gold to behave in ways it never has. The biggest misunderstanding about gold is this: people expect gold to behave like something that wants to be found. They imagine it waiting in obvious places, shining, standing out, rewarding those who search long enough. But gold has never behaved that way. Gold doesn't respond to desire. It doesn't respond to effort, and it doesn't respond to hope. It responds only to conditions. This is why so many people feel like gold is constantly just out of reach. They're searching with the wrong expectations. They're asking gold to act like a prize instead of a result. Nature doesn't hide gold. Nature filters it. Only a tiny number of places pass that filter, and those places don't announce themselves. They look ordinary, sometimes even disappointing. No drama, no excitement, just quiet evidence that only makes sense if you know what you're looking at. Most people walk away from those places too soon. Not because there's nothing there, but because nothing happens quickly. Gold doesn't reward impatience. It punishes assumptions. Once you stop expecting gold to behave the way stories describe it, something shifts. You stop chasing, you start understanding, and that's when rarity stops feeling mysterious. In the final part, I'll leave you with one thought that ties everything together, a simple idea that explains not just gold, but how nature works as a whole. Gold isn't rare because it's hiding. It's rare because nature almost never repeats herself. The conditions that create gold, the heat, the pressure, the movement of fluids, and the time required for all of that to happen together, those moments are uncommon. And when they do happen, they don't announce themselves. They don't shine. They don't look special. They just exist, quietly, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. Most people search for gold the way they search for answers in life, quickly, emotionally, hoping effort will replace understanding. But nature doesn't work that way. Gold doesn't reward desire. It rewards alignment. Once you understand that, gold stops feeling mysterious, and rarity stops feeling unfair. Because gold was never hard to find, understanding why it exists and where it doesn't was.